Do you get irritated, aggressive? Do you ruminate? You keep thinking a thought over and over? Do you expect the worst to protect yourself from potential future failure? These are all coping skills, maladaptive coping skills that if we keep engaging in when we're uncomfortable can lead to really long-term chronic pain, emotional pain. I want to read a little bit for this Therapy Thursday from one of this book I really, really love. It's called Mind and Emotions, a universal treatment for emotional disorders. You can find it on Amazon. It's great for clients and clinicians alike. But I have some screenshots here and I want to read you. Cassandra Dexter, one of our lovely therapists here, had a great post the other day about coping, maladaptive versus adaptive. They're all the ways we cope. Some of them have, negative effects. Some of them have positive effects. Maladaptive coping skills, like she shared, are quick and easy. They're what we know, but they might have long-term negative side effects as opposed to adaptive coping skills. It's something we need to practice: mindfulness, breathing, or journaling. So I want to read some of these common maladaptive coping skills that we're not usually aware of we're doing. So I want to see if you recognize yourself in any of these. I'll start with the first part here. It says, how emotional problems arise. Okay, how do emotional problems arise? It says emotional problems are often blamed on stress, trauma, early upbringing, interpersonal conflicts, hormones, and genetics. Usually that's what we kind of turn to and blame as the culprit for our emotional problems: stress, trauma, early upbringing, genetics. But surprisingly, research shows that another factor is much more responsible for emotional disorders: our coping behaviors. We each learn to deal with the stress of life using a repertoire of coping strategies designed to help us reduce that pain. That's what coping does. We're trying to cope and reduce the pain that we're experiencing in any given moment. The trouble is, some coping strategies work better than others, and some are absolutely catastrophic in terms of their long-term impact on our well-being. Oof. There are 7 maladaptive coping strategies that drive most of our emotional distress and turn painful moments into chronic disorders. It's very important to understand that every behavior that we have, coping skill, we have to understand if it's helping or hurting us. So these are a list of the 7 different emotional or the coping strategies that can lead to chronic disorders. So let's dive in. So it says these coping strategies are called transdiagnostic factors because they are the underlying cause of symptoms across many diagnostic categories like anxiety, depression, chronic anger, borderline personality disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, just to name a few. So let's take a look at these factors, these maladaptive coping strategies that can lie at the root of chronic emotional pain. Alrighty, let me find my page. Here we go. All right, so the first one is experiential avoidance. Experiential avoidance. Let me read the definition and see if this resonates. People who use this strategy automatically try to avoid painful emotions and thoughts. Who doesn't do that? As soon as they feel something uncomfortable, they try to suppress, numb, or push away the experience. Can you relate? They attempt to put a lid on things so that the pain is somehow muted. This coping strategy often backfires because avoidance not only fails to suppress painful feelings, it also makes the pain worse. They use an example. It says an example is Harold, who withdrew socially and began drinking in an effort to avoid the sadness of losing his job. But in his sadness, it turned into depression as he sank into alcoholism and isolation. So that is experiential avoidance. Anytime that a painful emotion or thought comes up, we avoid it. We don't want to experience it. So it's called experiential avoidance. And as I'm reading this, I'm probably going to get through 3 of them, and then I'll continue with this next Thursday for Therapy Thursday. The next one is rumination. Rumination. In this strategy, people use obsessive thoughts to blunt the fear of uncertainty and use judgments in the hope of forcing themselves or others to do better. In the form of worry, rumination tries to prepare you for every bad thing that might happen. So we think that when we get a thought, a disturbing thought, by thinking about it over and over, and we're just obsessing over it, we ruminate over it as a way to, well, we think it's preparing us for when it really hits, we'll be ready. That's not the case. So this strategy is we use obsessive thoughts to take the edge off the fear, the uncertainty, in hopes that, we'll feel better. We worry. We try to prepare for every bad thing that might happen. In the form of good, bad evaluations, it tries to perfect a flawed self and a flawed world. But these efforts never work. Ultimately, ruminations keep you focused on what's bothering you. So its net effect is that you feel more anxious, more angry, or a greater sense of loss and disappointment. So when something disturbing happens, if you're going through something, if you're in an argument, if something traumatic happened to you, it plays over and over and over in that jukebox of our mind, so to speak. And we think that we're as if thinking about it is filing it down, or taking the edge off, or making it prettier. Mm-mm. It actually just keeps us focused, keeps us activated. And it says it makes us feel more anxious, angry, and we have a greater sense of that loss or disappointment that original thought caused. It's so challenging, because it's like a train wreck. People say they can't take their eyes off it. That's what happens in our mind. Rumination. Do you ruminate as a coping mechanism, as a coping strategy? It can actually make things worse. All right, let's finish off with emotional masking. The aim of this coping strategy is to make sure no one ever sees your pain. It arises from a fear that if others saw your emotions, they might be contemptuous or judge you as weak, foolish, or crazy. So the mask must stay on, and the feelings that burn in you must stay hidden. Can you relate? I can. I used to do this. I think I might still do this. Emotional masking. I don't want anybody, especially the people that I love or the people that I work with, to see that I'm in pain. I don't want them to see me as weak, foolish, or crazy, just like this article says. So I keep that mask on, and I keep those burning feelings inside to stay hidden. It says the price for this maladaptive strategy is that the real you remains invisible, lost in the effort to look good, keeping up appearances. You can't show what you need or feel. You can't show what you need or feel, so you remain helpless and possibly unfulfilled in your relationships. No one knows what hurts or what needs to change. Wow. I think a lot of people can relate to that. Emotional masking. Do you mask your emotions? Do you hide? Do you want to keep it all together? Do you not want anybody to see you sweating? Do you want to pretend like you're perfect, you have it all together, that you never lose it, that you never get hurt, that nothing ever bothers you? It can be an ego thing, but it can also be a protective thing. You don't want to burden anybody. Emotional masking. So let's review. We went over the first 3 maladaptive coping strategies, a way to avoid pain, but it can actually make it worse. So we went over experiential avoidance, avoiding experiencing the emotions as they come up. We numb alcohol, drugs, any other addictive behavior, harmful behavior. It could be even shopping. Experiential avoidance, doing anything to avoid the experience of feeling. The second one was rumination. Do you keep this thought over and over and over on your mind? Talk about it with everybody as a way to control it or feel like you have a better grasp on it, when really it's just the thing filling your mind and pumping your body full of the discomfort, the distress, the dysregulation, which it says here makes you feel more anxious and more angry, when really we're trying to avoid it by ruminating. Do you do that? And the last one we read today was emotional masking, hiding how you really feel. Never telling people, never asking for help. never showing what's really going on, never getting your needs met, which can make it worse. Are you in a marriage? Are you in a partnership? Are you afraid? You mask everything that's uncomfortable. We know where that leads. So I read 3. There are 4 more because there are 7. But these are pretty good definitions. I really love this book. And I will continue next week with the other 4. I want you to list in the comments, write us in the comments. Did any relate to you? Did any resonate? Did any of these maladaptive coping strategies relate to you in your life? Tell us what you think. I hope you enjoyed that. As always, we'll see you next time.